Europe's largest mansion isn't just a palace, it's a labyrinth of secrets. For centuries, lives were hidden behind these walls. Devotion, betrayal, even tragedy, all swallowed by marble and gold. Most visitors see beauty, but few realize the darkness it conceals. What happened here could change everything you thought about history, and the truth is more shocking than you can imagine. Tonight, we uncover the stories that were never meant to be seen. We'll explain everything in this video, step by step. Don't skip it. In 1752, on the rolling hills of Campania, a king dreamed aloud. Charles VII of Naples imagined a palace that would outshine Versailles, a monument not just of power, but of permanence. He envisioned walls that could speak, ceilings that could sing, gardens that could command the wind itself. From the first stone laid to the last brushstroke of gilded paint, every choice was dictated by ambition, a relentless hunger to be remembered. Yet even in this brilliance, the human cost whispered in shadows, unnoticed by those who wandered the vast corridors. Builders, sculptors, and artisans poured their lives into the project. Fingers raw from chisel and hammer, backs bowed under stone and timber, hearts weighed with the quiet dread of working for a dream that might consume them entirely. The palace was more than architecture. It was a living organism, fed by the sweat and devotion of countless souls, and yet it never thanked them, never paused to honor the invisible lives sustaining its splendor. The palace rose like a mountain of marble, each layer heavier with expectation. Courtyards stretched into infinity, fountains leapt like captured lightning, staircases twisted like poetry, each step a measure of ambition. Artists labored in echoing halls, painting gods and kings whose faces would outlive the humans who had carved the stone, hammered the iron, polished the floors. The palace's magnificence was intoxicating, even overwhelming, but beneath the beauty lurked tension. Rumors swirled in the camps of laborers, whispers of accidents swept under rugs of marble. Some men never returned to their families. Some women, hired to maintain the palace's order, vanished quietly into the folds of history. No one recorded their names, only the echo of their labor, the faint imprint of their presence, lingering in the cool marble corridors. The palace was alive, yet it was indifferent, demanding perfection while offering only the emptiness of silence in return. Visitors arriving for the first time felt awe, almost fear. The scale defied comprehension. Even kings visiting from neighboring courts paused at the gates, as if the sheer ambition of Charles VII might crush them. And yet, behind the elegance, behind the fountains and frescoes, there was a rhythm of control, a meticulous orchestration that smothered spontaneity. Servants moved with precision, their lives measured by the palace's endless appetite. The palace demanded loyalty, demanded sacrifice, demanded everything, and in return, it offered only grandeur, distant and untouchable. Its corridors became a stage for unseen dramas, unrecorded sorrow, fleeting glances of longing, and quiet despair. Every ornate ceiling hid the exhaustion of those who had carried it into existence. Every polished marble floor reflected not the royalty above, but the ghosts below who labored in silence. Even the king, obsessed with perfection, could not escape the weight of what he had created. His vision had a pulse, a shadow, a cost. Nights passed in solitude, his footsteps echoing in chambers vast enough to swallow 100 men. The palace was his triumph, yet also a prison. The very walls he had commissioned to immortalize his reign now bore witness to something else. The fragility of human devotion, the invisible tears of those who built paradise, and the quiet tension that perfection always demands. And while Europe marveled at its beauty, few paused to see the shadows, the hidden lives that whispered their stories in the silence between marble and gold, stories that would linger long after the king himself was gone. The palace stretches beyond comprehension, a vast labyrinth of marble, stone, and glass, each corridor a testament to obsession. 12,000 rooms, 1,000 doors, countless staircases twisting like rivers of stone, each step echoing the ambition of those who dared to imagine it. It is the work of Luigi Vanvitelli, whose mind fused Baroque drama with neoclassical order, but it was the hands of thousands that turned vision into reality. Every column carved, every fresco painted, every gilded cornice polished, demanded years of sweat, dedication, and often suffering, though their names vanished into history. The scale alone overwhelms the senses, as if one could wander for a lifetime and never see the full measure of it. Visitors marvel at the beauty, but few consider the labor that made it eternal, the silent devotion that gives life to these stones. The ceilings rise like open skies, frescoes depicting gods, kings, and battles frozen in time. Each stroke of pigment is precise, intentional, but beneath the artistry lies an unspoken weight. Painters balanced on scaffolds, their necks craned, bodies strained for hours under the dim glow of oil lamps, working to fulfill a vision that demanded perfection. Mistakes were intolerable, erased not with forgiveness, but with labor redoubled, time stolen from life outside the palace walls. Vanvitelli's genius demanded obedience, and the palace, in turn, demanded sacrifice. Each room is a stage for human toil disguised as beauty, and the grand halls, while awe-inspiring, echo with the faint memory of exhaustion, the quiet sighs of those whose lives were measured in drafts of plaster and streaks of gold leaf. The staircases invite exploration, but conceal stories of desperation. Marble underfoot is smooth and cold, but beneath it lies the sweat and calluses of craftsmen who work tirelessly to shape perfection. Courtiers and royalty glide across these surfaces unaware, yet the stone remembers. It remembers the laborers' aching shoulders, the whispered complaints, the faint curses under breaths long ago silenced. Fountains within the palace leap with choreographed grace, water arcing like silver threads. Yet behind their beauty lies complex engineering that required ingenuity, precision, and lives spent learning to bend water to human will. The palace is a triumph of human intellect, yet its very perfection is a reminder of human fragility. Even the lighting of the rooms was a deliberate art, sunlight guided through windows, refracted across gilded mirrors to illuminate frescoes at exactly the right hour. And yet, this perfection demanded timing, coordination, and countless unseen hands to maintain. Rooms appear symmetrical, effortless, but every balance is an illusion held together by the tension between ambition and fatigue. The palace is alive with design, yet indifferent to the human heart that sustains it. Servants move silently through these spaces, performing their duties with meticulous care, shadows in a theater of grandeur, their lives swallowed by corridors that are too vast to hold warmth. Vanvitelli's vision sought eternity, yet it was built upon fleeting lives. Each ornate doorway frames not just beauty, but the absence of those who created it, the invisible strain that kept ceilings from cracking, marble from crumbling, fountains from failing. The palace seduces with awe, but conceals the obsession, the relentless pursuit of perfection that demanded everything and gave nothing. And within this brilliance lies a tension, palpable and unspoken, a quiet reminder that the price of beauty is measured not in gold, but in lives that whisper, labored, and vanished, leaving only the silent grandeur to testify. The palace is more than stone and marble. It is the lives of thousands compressed into corridors and chambers, lives that moved quietly beneath the weight of grandeur. Servants shuffled in silence, their footsteps muted against polished floors, carrying trays, oil lamps, and letters, their faces pale from long hours in shadowed halls. They lived by the palace's rhythms, their days dictated by the rising sun over the gardens and the shifting demands of a court that never slept. Children of the palace grew accustomed to absence, parents too busy with service to hold them for more than fleeting moments. Each smile, each sigh, each glance carried a silent acknowledgement. The palace demanded obedience, and in return offered only the faintest trace of recognition. The laborers who maintained the fountains, swept the courtyards, and scrubbed the endless steps knew the weight of invisibility. Their hands bore scars from stone and metal. Their muscles remembered strain even when the body rested, and yet no chronicler wrote their stories. Their lives were swallowed by scale and ambition. When storms tore through the gardens or when marble cracked, they repaired it swiftly, silently, before anyone noticed. The palace's beauty was a mask, brilliant and flawless, but beneath it were years of toil, exhaustion, and fleeting lives that passed unnoticed. The corridors echoed not only with laughter and music of royalty, but with the quiet hum of sacrifice, the invisible pulse of human effort that kept paradise from collapsing. Even within the gilded halls, tension simmered. Courtiers, servants, and guards navigated invisible hierarchies. Each move watched, each word weighed. Gossip traveled like a shadow along the walls. Whispers of ambition, betrayal, and longing. Some servants formed quiet alliances, small rebellions of spirit against the rigid order, but always carefully measured. The palace was unforgiving. A misstep could erase years of careful obedience. Some walked its marble floors with hidden resentment, others with a hollow pride, knowing their lives were entwined with perfection they would never claim. Their stories were brief, yet contained entire worlds of longing, hope, and quiet despair. The kitchens smelled of bread and roasted meats, but also of exhaustion, of long nights when fire and flame demanded constant attention. Apprentices learned their craft under harsh eyes, every mistake a reminder that the palace tolerated no carelessness. In the shadow of splendor, love grew cautiously, secretive, fleeting. Courtiers stole glances behind tapestries, servants exchanged whispers in stairwells, and yet the palace seemed to absorb all emotion, allowing only brief, flickering moments of human warmth before returning everything to order and expectation. It was a palace of obsession, but obsession was not confined to the walls. It seeped into the bones of all who lived there. And when night fell, the palace became a hollow echo, footsteps and voices fading until only the sound of water from distant fountains remained. Some workers lingered, unwilling to leave, chained by duty, by habit, or by necessity. Their lives had been claimed by the architecture, their dreams folded into ceilings, staircases, and gardens that would outlast them all. The Palace of Caserta was more than grandeur. It was a monument to human endurance and sacrifice, a place where beauty could not exist without cost, where power and perfection demanded lives that were invisible yet indelible, etched forever into the silent corridors that seemed to breathe, remember, and mourn. Behind the gilded doors of the Palace of Caserta, power had a weight that pressed on every breath. Kings and princes moved with deliberate caution, each gesture measured, each word carefully chosen, because the palace, for all its beauty, was a crucible of observation. Eyes lingered in the shadows, whispers crept along corridors, and alliances formed as silently as dust on marble. The royal family, though clothed in silk and gold, lived in invisible cages, confined by expectation, ritual, and the relentless pursuit of appearances. Love and loyalty were tested not in open court, but in silent rooms where walls were as much witnesses as servants, and every smile could mask betrayal. Romances flourished in secrecy, fragile and fleeting, hidden behind tapestries or under dim lantern light. Courtiers stole glances across endless halls, letters passed in silence, and yet the palace seemed to consume these intimacies, bending them into caution, shaping them into fear. One misstep, one misplaced trust, and a life could be erased quietly without announcement. The corridors held echoes of laughter and sighs, of promises whispered and broken, of the fragile pulse of humanity struggling against the immensity of ambition. And through it all, the palace remained indifferent, a silent observer that demanded perfection while allowing only fleeting glimpses of the heart. Not all stories were fleeting, some ended in tragedy. Scholars of the palace speak of rooms abandoned after mysterious deaths, chambers that remained locked for decades, untouched except by shadows. The circumstances were never fully recorded, obscured by discretion, by fear, or by the desire to maintain a veneer of control. Servants spoke in hushed tones of sudden illness, of accidents that seemed too precise to be chance, and of grief that could not be displayed. Each incident became a part of the palace's pulse, a rhythm of hidden sorrow beneath the surface of opulence. Even the brightest fresco, the most dazzling chandelier, carried an undercurrent of silence, of absence, as though the walls themselves remembered the lives they had witnessed end too soon. Politics and ambition intertwined with personal despair. Heirs jockeyed for favor, courtiers maneuvered for influence, and the palace became a stage for subtle power plays. Secrets were currency, and the cost of exposure could be ruin or exile. Every conversation held layers of meaning, every glance a measure of threat or trust. Behind the grand halls and mirrored corridors, tension was constant, a quiet hum that threaded through the air. No one moved freely, all were constrained by invisible chains, bound by the architecture of expectation, discipline, and fear. Even the king, the architect of this grandeur, could not escape the weight of what he had created. Nights were spent walking the endless galleries alone, listening to the echo of his own footsteps, confronting the realization that ambition demanded sacrifices that no crown could justify. The palace, magnificent and eternal, was a living testament not only to vision but to obsession, secrecy, and the quiet tragedies that accompany the pursuit of perfection. And as dawn fell, light spilling across corridors and frescoed ceilings, it illuminated not just the majesty of stone and marble, but the invisible human drama that had always lingered just beyond view, shaping every gesture, every sigh, every heartbeat within the walls. The gardens of Caserta stretch beyond imagination, a living canvas of stone, water, and greenery, designed to impress, to command, to mesmerize. Paths extend in precise lines, perfectly measured, as if the earth itself were ruled by geometry. Fountains erupt with choreographed grace, their sprays catching sunlight in arcs of silver that seem almost unreal. Visitors step onto these grounds and feel a sense of wonder, but few consider the labor hidden beneath the beauty. Gardeners bent over soil from dawn to dusk, hands blistered, backs aching, tending flowers and hedges that would be admired for moments and forgotten forever. Their work was a quiet devotion, unrecorded, essential, and entirely invisible to those who strolled the palace's promenade. Hidden grottos and secret paths invite curiosity, twisting unexpectedly among trees and statues. The geometry is perfect, yet it conceals isolation. Those who wandered alone could find themselves lost for hours, the sound of water masking footsteps and voices. The palace demanded order, yet the gardens allowed mischief, whispers, stolen moments between lovers, or fleeting rebellions against the strict routines of courtly life. Courtiers and servants alike navigated these grounds cautiously, knowing that even here, secrecy was a delicate art. Every rustle of leaves could conceal a witness, every fountain could drown out a whispered confession, and the gardens became a theater where tension and beauty coexisted in an uneasy harmony. Water flowed through the estate with meticulous precision, channeled from distant hills, engineered to arc and cascade in fountains that seemed impossible to sustain. The labor required to maintain them was immense. Engineers and laborers labored endlessly to keep the water moving, to prevent it from stagnating, to ensure it reflected sunlight and gilded statues as intended. Their expertise was essential, yet their existence rarely acknowledged, and beneath the sound of splashing fountains, one could almost hear the heartbeat of the estate itself, pulsing with human effort, ambition, and quiet suffering. Each drop of water, though beautiful, carried the weight of lives spent in service, lives that vanished into the labyrinth of paths and hedges, their sacrifice invisible under the glare of perfection. At dawn, the gardens shimmer with dew, 1,000 tiny mirrors reflecting the palace above. At dusk, shadows stretch long, hiding both beauty and danger, concealing small tragedies and secret meetings alike. Lovers stole moments behind hedgerows, children of the staff darted between statues, and the exhausted laborers moved silently along hidden service paths. Even in this paradise, the tension of expectation remained, a subtle reminder that perfection was never natural. It was demanded, maintained, and paid for in blood, sweat, and fleeting hours of life. The gardens, expansive and intoxicating, were a mirror of the palace itself, alluring, precise, and yet infused with human cost. The interplay of light and water, stone and foliage, creates illusions that delight the eye while concealing stories of endurance and quiet despair. Every fountain is an orchestra, every path a stage, every shadow a witness to lives entwined with beauty they could admire but never possess. The gardens of Caserta are not merely decoration, they are a testament to obsession, to the human capacity to create paradise while erasing the traces of those who made it possible. In their vastness lies both awe and melancholy, a reminder that behind every perfect hedge, every leaping fountain, every serene pond, there exists labor, longing, and the silent pulse of lives forever bound to the grandeur they shaped. Beyond the glittering halls and sunlit gardens, there exist corridors where light scarcely reaches, where dust thickens like fog over forgotten marble. These abandoned wings whisper a different story, one of silence and neglect, of human lives folded into shadows and nearly erased from memory. The floors creak underfoot, the ceilings bear faint cracks that no eye had repaired for decades, and the air is heavy with the scent of stone and decay. Here, the palace sheds its grandeur and reveals its fragility, a reminder that even perfection cannot resist time, and that ambition always leaves behind its ghosts. Once, these corridors were alive with purpose. Servants bustled between kitchens, workshops, and chambers, carrying the weight of palace life on their shoulders. Children played in corners that now lie in shadow, their laughter absorbed by walls now blank with dust. Courtiers once debated, whispered, and schemed along these paths, their footsteps a soft percussion in the symphony of order and routine. Every door, every threshold held meaning. Each passage connected human lives to ambition, labor, and desire. But now, silence dominates, and the echoes that remain carry only fragments of stories, tiny glimpses of lives sacrificed to sustain beauty that could never pause for gratitude or rest. The light that filters through high windows falls in narrow beams, revealing patches of cracked marble and faded frescoes, hints of artistry that once inspired awe. Touch them, and they crumble under the gentle weight of a fingertip, proof that even mastery cannot withstand neglect. And yet, there is a strange beauty in decay, a melancholy rhythm that speaks to those who listen. These wings are monuments to human effort, the labor of countless hands that will never be named, gestures of devotion frozen into stone and plaster. Their absence resonates as deeply as any triumph, a testament to lives quietly consumed in service of an immortal dream. Hidden within these empty rooms are traces of intimacy, of lives lived behind closed doors. A torn curtain, a splintered banister, a faded imprint on a wall, small details that hint at fleeting joy, whispered conversations, and fleeting glances stolen amid the rigid choreography of palace life. Lovers may have met in secrecy here, conspiracies may have been hatched, and fears unspoken may have taken root, all now swallowed by shadow. The absence of human presence amplifies the tension, the sense that this was once a world of urgency, of expectation, and that now it waits, patient and eternal, for the next observer to notice the traces that remain. Even the silence is alive, heavy with history. Footsteps resonate, carrying the memory of urgency and exhaustion, of lives measured in service and sacrifice. The grandeur outside these walls is diminished here, replaced by fragility and stillness, a quiet reminder that ambition exacts a price and that time spares no one, not kings, not courtiers, not those whose labor built paradise. The abandoned wings of Caserta speak in a voice of both awe and sorrow, revealing the hidden human cost behind opulence, the invisible labor, the suppressed longing, and the quiet despair that shaped every stone and marble arch, leaving behind a beauty that is as haunting as it is magnificent. The ceilings of the Palace of Caserta rise like skies painted by human hands, frescoes stretching in vast expanses of color and light. Artists worked for years, suspended on scaffolds high above the floors, their brushes trembling with precision and exhaustion. Each stroke was a negotiation between inspiration and obligation, a compromise between genius and expectation. The images they created are breathtaking. Gods and kings, myth and allegory, battles and triumphs frozen in pigments that have survived centuries. Yet for every masterpiece, there were countless hours of strain, bodies contorted, eyes sore from the glare of oil lamps, hands raw from pigment and plaster. Beauty came at a price few ever witnessed. Marble sculptures stand as silent sentinels in grand halls, their forms perfect and eternal, yet their creation demanded relentless discipline. Carvers chipped away at stone with patience that bordered on obsession, shaping the divine from cold, unyielding rock. Each curve, each line, each delicate detail represents not just artistic vision, but labor pushed to the limits, mistakes silently erased, exhaustion endured in silence. The statues gaze upon visitors with serene authority, unaware of the quiet suffering of the humans who gave them life, who dedicated decades to their perfection, who measured their own value against the immensity of the palace's expectations. The walls are adorned with frescoes that tell stories within stories, each layer revealing not only myth but the human pulse behind the artistry. Courtiers, kings, and even the artists themselves moved in tandem with these visual narratives, lives intertwined with the images that both celebrated and constrained them. Painters and apprentices toiled under the unblinking gaze of Von Vitelli's vision, correcting errors that might have cost them both time and favor. The palace demanded awe, and awe demanded sacrifice. Every vibrant hue, every subtle shadow is evidence of countless hours, of human bodies and minds stretched toward impossible perfection, a perfection that could never acknowledge those who achieved it. Even the smallest details betray obsession. Gilded cornices that had to be flawless, friezes that must tell entire stories, ceilings that convey power and divinity in a single sweep. And yet, the grandeur masks a quiet tension. Some frescoes were painted over decades, layers upon layers of revision marking the invisible struggle between the artist's hand and the king's will. The palace became both canvas and cage, where talent was celebrated but never free, where creativity existed under the shadow of expectation, and where even triumph carried the weight of silent suffering. Visitors wander through these galleries and halls, their eyes drawn to brilliance, rarely noticing the traces of human vulnerability embedded in every surface. The artistry commands reverence, yet beneath it lies devotion, labor, and quiet despair. Each stroke, each sculpture, each painted face is a testament to obsession, to endurance, to lives shaped by ambition, and to the invisible costs that make opulence possible. In the galleries of Caserta, beauty is eternal, but the human story that created it is equally enduring, hidden in plain sight, echoing softly in the rhythm of footsteps, the glint of marble, and the whisper of centuries-old pigment. During the Second World War, the Palace of Caserta became something it had never been: a command post, a strategic center, a stage for human conflict rather than courtly elegance. Soldiers marched through halls once silent but for whispers and footsteps of courtiers, their boots echoing against marble floors, each step a sharp contrast to the delicate rhythm of palace life. Maps replaced frescoes, orders replaced music, and the grandeur that had celebrated kings and power now bore witness to the stark realities of survival. The palace, so accustomed to the pulse of ritual and perfection, trembled under the weight of urgency and fear, absorbing the tension like a sponge, storing it in the walls that had always watched quietly. Rooms once devoted to art became offices. Vast corridors became passageways for strategy and secrecy. Officers lingered where nobility had once held court, planning movements that could save or end lives with equal indifference. The fountains outside, once symbols of triumph and beauty, gurgled as if in muted protest, their water reflecting uniformed men and the shadow of war above. Servants, if they remained at all, moved with heightened caution, caught between orders, survival, and the instinct to preserve what they could of a palace suddenly under occupation. The echoes of their footsteps were softer now, tentative, as if the marble itself demanded restraint. The human cost was invisible in official records, but palpable in every chamber. Soldiers, exhausted and anxious, paused before frescoes of gods and heroes that seemed oblivious to their fear. Couriers ran messages through corridors once designed for leisurely promenades, letters trembling in hands stiff from cold intention. Kitchens and storerooms were pressed into service for rationing and care, staff forced to navigate both duty and danger. Every corner of the palace held reminders of lives redirected, of routines disrupted, of devotion repurposed for the machinery of war, and through it all, the palace remained indifferent, a silent observer, its beauty untouched, yet its atmosphere irrevocably altered. Bombs fell across the region, yet the palace endured, a miracle of stone and engineering, though not without scars. Faded frescoes bore tiny chips, marble cracked in places where vibrations found weaknesses, and ceilings groaned in protest at tremors they had never known. Soldiers wrote their names on walls in the quiet of night, ephemeral marks of presence in a place built to outlast all human memory. Each act of survival, each fleeting gesture of defiance, left invisible marks on the atmosphere, traces of emotion that could not be recorded but were absorbed by the palace itself. Even after the fighting subsided, the human stories lingered. Some corridors remained tainted with fear, some rooms carried the quiet grief of lost comrades, and the echoes of hurried decisions and whispered warnings still seemed to vibrate in the halls. The Palace of Caserta, magnificent and eternal, had once again become a witness, not to ambition or beauty, but to the fragility of human life, to courage and exhaustion, to devotion repurposed in the shadow of destruction. It had endured, but its silence now held the memory of tension, sacrifice, and the invisible scars left by war on both the people and the palace that sheltered them. Today, the Palace of Caserta stands as both monument and mystery, a place where the grandeur of the past meets the careful vigilance of those who seek to preserve it. Conservators move quietly through halls where dust gathers like memory, their hands gentle on frescoed ceilings, their eyes tracing cracks that have grown over centuries. Each gesture is deliberate, a dialogue between human care and the enduring ambition that shaped the palace. They clean, repair, and restore, But in every sweep of brush, in every careful polishing of marble, they encounter traces of lives long gone. Notes scribbled in margins, footprints on worn staircases, faint fingerprints left in plaster before it hardened. Every restoration is a rediscovery, a revelation of labor and devotion invisible to the tourists who stroll through gilded corridors. The palace is alive with secrets, and preservation unlocks them slowly, like light filtering through a dusty window. Behind doors long sealed, hidden rooms whisper stories that have been silenced for centuries. A faded fresco may conceal a hidden signature of an artist. A small altar might reveal a letter tucked between stones. A carved figure may bear the imprint of a hand that was never recorded in history. Every discovery deepens the human connection to this vast monument, revealing the sweat, skill, and quiet obsession of those who built it. The palace is no longer only a palace. It is a living archive, a memory embedded in stone, awaiting those who can see beyond beauty into the lives it cradled and consumed. Even the gardens demand attention, their perfection dependent on endless vigilance. Teams of gardeners prune, water, and realign paths to preserve the symmetry and flow envisioned centuries ago. Fountains are tested, pipes repaired, and statues carefully cleaned to prevent decay. And yet, beneath this modern care, there is the echo of those who first cultivated these grounds, whose labor shaped the fountains and hedges that now flourish under careful hands. The gardens remain a delicate balance of human ingenuity and tireless effort, a reminder that even paradise requires constant tending, that beauty is never spontaneous, never free from cost. Tourists may marvel at the marble, the ceilings, the fountains, but each restored surface carries a story of devotion, of painstaking work to keep history alive. Every step through the palace is an encounter with the past, with generations of hands, eyes, and hearts dedicated to creating perfection. There is a tension in restoration, a quiet obsession to preserve without altering, to honor the vision of Vanvitelli while acknowledging the countless lives that shaped it. Each crack mended, each fresco revived, each polished floor reflects not only artistic brilliance, but also human endurance, resilience, and unrecorded sacrifice. And as night falls over Caserta, when conservators leave their tools and corridors lie silent once more, the palace breathes a soft, almost imperceptible sigh. Restoration is more than maintenance. It is communion, an acknowledgement that beauty survives because of human labor, devotion, and care. The palace endures, yet its walls hold memory as much as stone, memory of those who built it, those who lived in its shadow, and those who labor now to keep its stories alive. Each restoration uncovers not only artistry, but the invisible pulse of human lives entwined with ambition, obsession, and the eternal pursuit of perfection. A reminder that Caserta is forever more than a monument. It is a living testament to the costs of beauty, the endurance of history, and the quiet sacrifices that sustain both. The Palace of Caserta is more than stone and marble. It is a testament to ambition, obsession, and the human desire to leave a mark that outlives flesh and time. Its corridors stretch endlessly, each step echoing with the footfalls of generations who walked here before, invisible yet ever present. The grandeur is overwhelming, yet within it lies a quiet tension, a subtle reminder that perfection always carries a cost. Every fresco, every gilded cornice, every marble staircase bears witness to lives shaped, constrained, and often consumed by the pursuit of beauty. The palace exists not just to impress, but to remind us that human effort and obsession are inseparable from the splendor it displays. Walking through the halls, one senses the invisible pulse of devotion, the unrecorded labor that made eternity possible. Servants, artisans, gardeners, soldiers, and courtiers, all left traces that cannot be erased, echoes that linger long after their footsteps faded. The palace holds their stories between layers of paint and stone, in the curves of statues and the shimmer of fountains. Every detail demands attention, yet every detail conceals something more, a reminder that behind grandeur lies sacrifice, that every triumph is tempered by the lives quietly given to sustain it. Beauty is not free, and here it has been purchased with time, sweat, and enduring tension. Even in stillness the palace speaks. The gardens whisper the meticulous care of countless hands. The fountains murmur the precision and ingenuity required to tame water into art. And the ceilings loom with the silent labor of painters who stretch toward the heavens in pursuit of perfection. History layers itself here, visible in cracks, dust, and faded frescoes, yet invisible in the human experiences that shaped every stone. Each room is a fragment of a story, each corridor a thread linking ambition, devotion, and quiet suffering. The observer can sense the heartbeat of the palace, a rhythm sustained by centuries of human effort, by lives entwined with the pursuit of grandeur that both nourished and constrained them. The palace's legacy is not static. It lives in tension between permanence and fragility. Restoration uncovers hidden corners, revealing secrets of forgotten rooms, unnoticed inscriptions, and human traces preserved in silence. Modern efforts honor Van Vitelli's vision, yet they also honor those whose labor made it real. The palace is a mirror of human obsession, capable of inspiring awe while demanding respect for the invisible lives that built it. It reminds us that beauty is inseparable from toil, that splendor is inseparable from sacrifice, and that even the most magnificent creations are haunted by the human stories that underpin them. At sunset, light spills across fountains, gardens, and endless corridors, illuminating the palace in golden hues that mask centuries of tension, sorrow, and devotion. The walls hold memory as tangibly as stone, echoing ambition, obsession, and endurance. Every glance at its grandeur is a reminder of the fragile human pulse behind it, of lives lived in service, lives measured by perfection, and lives erased yet present in every shadow, every reflection, every whisper of Caserta's vast halls. It stands eternal, a monument to ambition, beauty, and the quiet human cost that sustains it, a living testament that even paradise carries shadows within. Behind the walls of Europe's largest mansion, stories whisper, stories that remind us even paradise has its dark corners.